At Kalagon, we serve one mission, and that's to make a difference in someone's life every day. It really is that simple. We wake up and we work hard to make someone's life better. And our guest panel today serves that same mission. They share in that. They use their skills and expertise to help others. So let's welcome them now. Betsy Page has been a speech-language pathologist for 18 years. She specializes in cognitive rehab, cardiopulmonary conditions, communication disorders, swallowing therapy. And Betsy is also an educator, content developer. She works really well with research and development. And in the last few years, she's brought all of that experience and expertise into her newest passion by receiving her certification. She's completed Levels 1 and Level 2 Narrative-Focused Trauma Care certificates with the Allender Center. She's currently serving as a facilitator of story groups with adults with a ministry context. Welcome, Betsy.
Thanks for having me.
And Jalen. Jalen has worked in healthcare over 10 years. He started off as a server and cook in a retirement care community. And while he was finishing up his organizational management and business administration degrees, soon they realized Jalen was meant to be a people person and he was meant for great things. So he was promoted into being an admissions coordinator, assisting those coming in for short-term rehab and getting to know them and their families. And then he moved from one coast to the other and served as a sales and marketing director for an assisted living facility. Along his career journey, he's worked with people dealing with physical, mental trauma, cognitive impairment, illnesses, injury. Jalen brings his love of people with all abilities into his current passion as digital creator and host for his podcast, Elevated Minds. His podcast focuses on elevating mentally, spiritually, and physically. He will soon have his life coach certification, and he's an aspiring author. Welcome, Jalen.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start off with a definition. What is mental health?
Mental health to me would be just having, a good state of mind. It's just like physical health. You want to have a strong body. You want to be able to be healthy, be able to do your normal functions that you can every single day. And the same thing for your mind. Mental health is just as important as physical health. And I feel like mental health is really just being able to get through life, hardships, things that do happen, and be able to have emotional intelligence and be able to move forward in a positive and healthy way when it comes to things mentally, because you can't see the mind, but it is just as important for you to have a strong and healthy mind, just like it is for your body.
Agreed. And then another thing that comes up is the word trauma. Betsy, can you define trauma for us?
Absolutely. This one's really important, just because so many of us think of traumatic event when we think of trauma. And certainly no one gets through life without some sort of traumatic event. But beyond that traumatic event, depending on if we receive care after, if we have agency during that traumatic event to get to safety, that traumatic event might end up being internalized, and then we have a post-traumatic issue within us to deal with. So if we have a traumatic event, that doesn't necessarily mean we have internalized trauma that we need to work through. But sometimes we might think, hey, I don't have a story big enough to say that I've had trauma, except we have all these symptoms. And so that's where then we start to dig into our story.
That makes sense. So we talked earlier about, in your bio, that you lead story groups. Mm-hmm. What does that entail? What's a story group?
Yeah, so I am trained through the Allender Center. So I am explicitly trained in Allender theory and methodology. And here the idea is that we all have a story, right? But we might not be telling our story very accurately. We might be editing it to make it nicer, more pleasant, and our bodies know better. So we may be able to formulate a nicer story in our conscious mind, but our bodies hold the truth of the story. And as much as we may try to avoid going through the difficulty of the pain, we really can only hold that so long. We have all of these maladaptive strategies, right, to avoid or to numb, right? But if we can choose what I love, Resna Menikin calls it the clean pain. If we can choose the clean pain to go through, then that's where healing can be found on the other side.
Jalen, what are you hearing from people that tune in or call in or send you messages from your subscribers on what are they constituting mental health issue?
People usually talk to me a lot about the mental trauma that they've acquired from the different things that they've experienced, whether it be like infidelity or, dealing with someone that had narcissistic personality disorder or, being physically abused. So there are, all different types of people that will comment. And so that's kind of what I see a lot is people are going through so much, they hold so much trauma mentally and sometimes even physically. And a lot of times they don't know how to move past it. They don't know how to heal through it. But like Betsy was just saying, there's no way around it. You can try and, self-medicate with things, you could try to get your mind off it and go around the subject. But at the end of the day, you have to feel it. You have to be able to understand what's going on, be aware as you're going through these feelings, because it's uncomfortable. Healing is uncomfortable. People make it seem that healing is so simple, but it's not a simple. I'll say this: it's simple, but it's not easy. That's what the best way to say it. But like Betsy was saying, there's one way through that, and that's to actually feel the emotion, to feel the pain, to actually go through it and walk yourself through it. And in talking about it, and really that's one of the main things, is just talking about it and having someone to even be there to kind of guide you. Sometimes you just feel alone in those types of situations. So, but yeah, going through it by feeling it is, I feel like, the best way to get through trauma.
Oh, and that's not easy at all.
Mm-mm.
So there's not one recipe, I'm sure, but are there, I know the stages of grief, but does that apply to your all's situation when dealing with people, or is there just not a recipe at all and it's just unique?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's kind of not a one all type of recipe, because different types of people have dealt with different types of traumas, and we have what we call higher, high T traumas and lower T traumas. So there's people that have dealt with things that are kind of on a lower level, but it still was traumatic in some type of way, and some people that dealt with huge traumatic things where it's going to take a lot more time and effort to heal through that. So yeah, I don't think there's a one way, to deal with that. So there's different types of, methods or different types of techniques. Some things will work for some people, but some will not work for others. So yeah, I definitely feel that it's difficult. It's not it's not a super easy task, but it's definitely possible. And I've seen people actually get through these things and be able to talk through them. And a lot of times it's, they just need some support.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that, Betsy?
Yeah, I would say certainly there are stages. A person needs to be a consenting, participant in the healing process. So if they can't be there for whatever reason, that they have to be able to say, yes, I want this and I want to participate. And then I think a lot of the healing happens in the co-regulation. And I know, Wendy, you want to touch on that a little bit later. But if I can stay with you, right, in your story, and I can stay regulated in our, interpersonal neurobiology, right, that can happen. I can bring a staying power to that story in order that I can witness and we can move through. But there's always that awareness as far as on the end of the facilitator is this person regulated? Can they tolerate where we're going, or do we need to stop and offer some kindness, some care?
Well, I think that's a perfect lead in. What does regulation look like, or what does dysregulation look like? We can go there now.
Yeah, that's a good question. Dan Siegel is where I learned this, and I love his visual. So there's this 10-point scale, and you're not trying to be at the top of the scale or the bottom. You're trying to be in the middle. So you're kind of in this middle flow of the river. And the top of the scale might look like hyperarousal. So maybe you're super agitated, or you're gonna explode, right? So that might be hyperarousal. Where at the end, the bottom end, the 1 to 3 end of the 10-point scale is hypoarousal. So I may be shut down. And the kind of the tragedy of hypoarousal is sometimes people think, oh, they're so calm. They're totally regulated in this situation. Meanwhile, that person, like, they're shut down. I know for myself, I tend to go to hypoarousal, and I can feel myself getting cold. I can feel losing the warmth from my extremities up. And so we want to make sure people are within their window of tolerance while we're doing difficult things. It doesn't mean we're not going to talk about difficult things, but we don't have to go so hard or so fast or to the worst thing. We can stay in your window of tolerance, and I can help with that co-regulation. It's a very healing experience. And often it's what was missing in the trauma, right? So we all have traumatic events, but if we don't have that stable presence, that secure attachment to come back to, then that's where that trauma can kind of get stuck, that we need to process through.
Well, many of our viewers are living an active seated life, and they all have a different story. Other viewers are caring for someone else. And then we have a lot of clinicians looking for help, resources, education, and they tune in order to be able to help others with new tools and new tips. So we have, kind of a broad audience, but I think from what you're saying so far, we can all take something from this. So we've kind of defined mental health and the regulation, but what are some tips? I think if someone's watching this or reaching out to one of you, that's a good first step, because that's what you were talking about. They have that buy-in, that first initial buy-in Betsy was talking about. What are some strategies we could help them with? Because it is going to be different for everybody, but maybe if we throw out a few things, something will work for someone.
First, I think it's important for us to be honest. And this is something that I came to the hard way, right? So I'm not coming to this as someone who figured it all out and then I'm offering this thing to other people. So I found myself in a really tough situation, realized, hey, these strategies that I've come up with to get through life, they're not going to do, right? So one of the things I learned as I dug into trauma is how often, as a speech therapist in the medical setting, what I was actually doing is working with people in the midst of a trauma. So having a significant medical event or a diagnosis, right? That maybe there's not one BAM event, but it's a slow progression. There's no way around it. Those are the hard things of life to deal with. And we might say, well, at least I'm not blank, right? But the truth of the matter is there's a loss. And so we have to acknowledge, hey, I am dealing with a loss, or I am dealing with a trauma. And if we're the clinicians in the room, it's really important that we approach whatever discipline we're bringing trauma-informed. Right? So the person that I'm trying to do speech therapy with really needs to be seen and attuned to first before I can ask them to do other swallowing exercises or that type of thing. It's really important that I'm with. Jalen, I'm curious what you're thinking.
No, I agree. And I wrote down a few notes. One thing I noticed when I mostly worked with memory care residents when at a memory care unit. And one thing I've realized also is focus on the person and not whatever their disability is. And so, like you said, it's like at the end of the day, you're addressing them as a person and not not what they're dealing with. So if they're wheelchair bound, or they've got an eyesight problem, or whatever it might be, you're still addressing them as a person. And also, sometimes we offer help, but we need to also make sure that we're asking, can we help? Offer, but don't just start doing it. That a lot of times, I think a lot of people run into situations, especially if you're a caregiver of a family member, you just want to hop in there and just start helping or start providing care. But you still have to remember, this is a person that has feelings, they have their own emotions, and they are a person before you're dealing with, before you're a caregiver. You have to remember that this is a person that has their own sense of being. So just remembering to respect that is a huge thing for people that do have issues or disabilities or conditions. I think that's really a big thing when it comes to that.
Very good point. It's not a checklist of, if I'm
Exactly.
the person that's dealing with the trauma, a checklist to get through it, or the person caring for someone. It's not a checklist. It's real. So we want to get our mind right. All the things you all said in the beginning, you want a healthy mind, a strong mind. What are some strategies to get there? I know, Betsy, you've talked about an app in the past that you started with, and just throw us out some things that people might be able to utilize.
Yeah. So there's some kind of like rescue strategies, right? So I'm realizing in my body that I'm dysregulating. And so what I can do in that moment, and here we're talking, not to get too nerdy, but here we're talking about in our autonomic nervous system. So the system that controls our automatic functions, the system that kicks in when I need to run away from a tiger, right? My logic brain doesn't say, well, let's make a pro and con list and figure out what we should do here. No, that goes offline, and my autonomic system takes over so I can act quickly. So there is no way for me to volitionally control my heart rate. There's no way for me to volitionally control my digestion. There is one way into this system, and that's through our breath. So I can do breath work to kind of backdoor into my system to say, hey, we're actually okay right now. So we can come back down. We don't need to be in chronic sympathetic regulation. We can come down. And breath work is one way we can do that. And there's lots of apps. You can find an app, just type breath work into your app store. If you're someone who's feeling, a lot of anxiety and you're amped up, a calming breath is going to help bring you back down. A calming breath before bed. I've noticed with a lot of people I've worked with.
I was going to bring that up. You taught me this. So
yes.
Show us, because it has worked for me, because I'll lay there, my mind races, and I know a lot of people feel the same way. And if you've been through trauma, that might be when you're laying down quiet, when it all comes to you. So I think teach that to us real quick, because it has helped me.
And as we talk about it, I'm going to mention those caregivers too, because you also need to recognize you're in overload, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a calming breath, sometimes it's an inhale for 4, exhale for 6, and just repeating that. You can also add a pause for 2 at the end of that exhale. So if you guys want to do it with me,
yes,
you're going to try to breathe down into your belly. So let this relax up here. So you'll inhale, exhale. Pause. And then you'd inhale again. Exhale. Pause. Generally, doing 5 of those breaths takes about a minute, and it will bring down your system, your heart rate, all of that. There are some people who've put it on the app to do it before bed, and they say, I can't finish, I always fall asleep.
Yay.
Wonderful. And there's other breaths to work on. If sometimes you're feeling really numb and you need to come up a little bit, there's alerting breaths you can do as well.
I want to add to that because it's funny. I was going to say breath work, because breath work has been such a huge thing for me. And breathing is really important when you're trying to, for one, stay present on one thing, So meditation has been a huge tool for me, being someone that has dealt with anxiety and, being, just having your mind racing and all this stuff and being overloaded. It's such a huge thing when you're trying to stay present and stay focused on this moment right here. Because a lot of times we're getting overwhelmed with things and we've got all these thoughts just going all over the place and we're not even catching it. It's like in our subconscious. So I just wanted to add to that. Your breath work is so huge when it comes to that, because it kind of quiets your mind. It keeps you can't focus on 1,000 things at a time when you're focusing on one thing. So the breath work is just that's a huge thing, and it can help a lot of people, because it helps me. I do it every single day.
Yeah. One thing I'm just going to add that I often mention to people when I'm working with them is you definitely want to be mindful of your breath. So your attention is on your breathing, and that's actually really hard. Mm-hmm. So another caveat of this is when you notice your mind wandering, do not beat yourself up, right? You're growing this muscle. It's kind of like flexing this muscle, and you'll get better at it. So when you notice your mind had wandered, just notice that, and come back.
It's a good thing.
You're just going to notice and come back, and that's all.
So breath work, meditation, what are some other strategies either for yourself or you share with others?
I'll say definitely having some type of a peer group or some type of a group of support, because what I've noticed is social isolation is a bad thing, one for the patient, but also it's just bad for you in general if you're the caregiver. So making sure that you can have maybe people that you can be around, that you can share these because there's other people that are dealing with the same things as well. So just knowing that you're not alone, knowing that there are other people that deal with it, and being able to share, like other people have their special techniques and things that they do that works for them. So being able to kind of bounce ideas off of each other, and just the fact of knowing that you're not alone, you're not the only person dealing with something like this. It's liberating in a way. And so even for the residents and patients, just ones that are dealing with these different things, having other people that they can share this situation with, it could go a really long way mentally.
That brings me back to one of our first episodes. We featured Kenny, and he's does CrossFit and dives, and he lives an active seated life, very active seated life. And he did say that, when his accident first happened, being in the rehab with people going through the same thing was a benefit. He did tell me that. Versus some people, when you don't have that support group, then you just feel like you're around people. He didn't say this, but you feel like you're around people, and I've heard them say, the only place I don't feel pitied is the support group, because We're all in it together. Nobody feels sorry for me there. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Excellent. Yeah, there's some other grounding techniques you can do. Depending on where you fall, because we all cope differently. Another practice I really like is Dan Siegel's Wheel of Awareness. And so you're going to go through where you are in time and space, how your body's feeling, even the interior of your body. And that's a hard one for me. It's really hard to focus that much on it, but I try in kindness just to come back. And it's another one where sometimes I'm like, oh, I fell asleep. But it was good. I needed to be able to come down and rest.
Jalen, you didn't put it in your bio, but I know that you're also a musician.
Oh,
so is music something that you find helps people?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. When I worked at the memory care facility, that's one thing we incorporated was music. We'd have live music, so people would come out once a week. Sometimes they'd have me go out there and sing for them, or we'll let them do karaoke. And that one activity was just so, like, it really does something for everyone. And we actually had a group. They would come out and they would do music. They would play violin. They would have like a piano. One guy had a saxophone, and they would come out and they were a mariachi band, and the residents loved it. And so, especially people that were dealing with things that might have been terminal illnesses, or people that couldn't go outside, or couldn't, just couldn't enjoy to the extreme that some other people could. Music was one of those things that just brought everyone together. It just brought a lot of emotion, a lot of happiness, especially. And the interesting thing was there would be a lot of residents that not only were wheelchair bound, but also had like dementia, or they couldn't remember a lot of things. But when the music came on, it's like they would revert back to a moment in time where they could. And it was like, I feel like music has like a spiritual component to it, an emotional component, and it really, it just brightens people up. It has the potential to strengthen your soul, your spirit. So I think music definitely is a huge component when it comes to upliftment and just, positive energy.
And you both have something unique too that I know. Betsy's been doing jiu-jitsu. You have to say
jiu-jitsu.
That's awesome.
I know, Jalen, you do a lot of working out. Is that something you recommend to people for them to try? I mean, if we try different things and find what works for us, I think that's a good recipe to start with.
Oh, 1000%. I believe, like I said in the beginning, of your mental health is like a muscle, just like your body is is composed of a lot of muscles. And it's scientifically proven that if you can get, even if it's just 20 minutes a day or 200 minutes a week, something like that, something along those lines, your mental performance is going to be 1,000 times better. Your cognitive abilities, your stress levels are going to be down. You're going to actually just be in a better mood. You're going to produce more, I hope I'm saying the word right, I think it's serotonin, but or dopamine. You're going to get more natural hits of those, so you're going to be in better moods. And I mean, honestly, your body kind of follows, or sorry, your mind sometimes, a lot of times, follows what your body does. So if your body's moving, you're active, especially for elderly, especially for people that might be wheelchair bound, any types of exercises are going to help you for one, physically, and when you're helping your physical, you're going to automatically be helping your mental as well. So I really can't stress it enough. Your physical, any type of exercise and fitness and stuff like that, even if it's just a little bit every single day, it's just going to be really good. It's going to only have good benefits for you.
Like Betsy says, it's all attached.
It's all attached.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't know if it's just Western culture and medicine, but we have this idea that we have these puzzle pieces, right? And we just take this puzzle piece over here and work on it, and then it's just going to link up. And that doesn't really work out. We're embodied creatures, and so if I try to say, well, this part of me I don't like, so let's just disintegrate there, right? I don't function as well. So yeah, it's interesting because as I started the first certificate program with the Allender Center, in preparation they said, we need you to be thinking about what you would do for self-care. And I was like, say, huh? No idea, no clue. I'm even asking people, hey, if you were me, what would you do for self-care?
You did ask people.
I really did. I was phoning lots of friends. And one of the things that I had always liked for years is watching MMA fights. And so to consider, hey, I can actually do this. So I do. I do Muay Thai, which is Thai kickboxing, and jiu-jitsu.
That's
and
awesome.
I'm very new at both of them. But man, if I'm not giggling most of the time and having just a great time moving my body, I would not feel that way if I was going for a run. That's not a delight for me. So I think part of the take home is, what do you enjoy? And trying to figure out, right? And finding what's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree with that, because, you know, I weightlift, and I tried boxing. Boxing is so much fun, but what I like, someone else might not like. So I always say, whatever type of, like you just said, whatever type of fitness that feels good to you. Because me, I enjoy hiking. Some people hate hiking. Some people love basketball, or, you know, they love different types of sports. But so whatever type of sport, whatever type of fitness will make you feel most comfortable and make you feel good and feel happy, I think that's great. You know, what some person loves might be yoga, but some other people might not be into that, you know. So anything that's going to get you moving and get your mind going, and it's great. It's a good thing. Just find what works for you.
And there's so much technology now and adaptations where, if it's something they previously enjoyed and they have been through a physical trauma, where they maybe think they can't do that anymore, there are ways to adapt and really try to make that happen so that they can feel that again.
I think part of that too is also, we have this idea that, first of all, that self-care is somehow spoiling ourselves. If I just went on spoiling sprees, that's not really self-care, you know? That maybe is more dissociative. But also this idea that taking up time or space or resources on ourselves is not a good investment, right? It's not a good idea. I just want to push back on that really hard, particularly if you're a caregiver. This includes you, as well as the person who maybe has the injury. We all need this. It's the oldest example, right? The mom who's supposed to put her oxygen on first so that she can take care of her child and get the oxygen on them. It's not you being selfish and taking up space that you shouldn't. It's a good investment. The most important thing that the people in your life need is you, right? Not you to make more money, not you to whatever it is you think. They actually need you present, attuned with them. And that's a gift.
And the healthier our mental health is, the more we can be there for those in our care, or those that rely on us and those we love.
Absolutely.
Well, we touched go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to mention one more thing that we can do, and certainly you can do it with someone else, like Jalen had mentioned, in a support group, or in, say, a story group like I do, or even in counseling, or with a good friend. But we need to tell our story. Even if it's writing it down, this is very integrative for our mind. So in cases where a trauma event happens, certain parts of our brain go offline for survival. This is important for survival. And if you survived, that's good, right? Writing or giving words to that is a way to help integrate your brain. So even if you're doing it alone in a journal, this is very healing and integrating.
I was going to mention that. I like the journaling. And then I've heard a new thing is to video journal, not to share like a YouTube video, but for yourself. So your video journal, and I've heard that too. But writing, I think, is better for someone like me, because I just feel like that gets it all out there, and there's a motor aspect to it, and I'm pressing on that pen or pencil and getting it all out. So journaling is great. And then I was going to bring up getting with a licensed clinician if that's what you need, or just having a few sessions to see, make sure that that's an avenue as well. And then there's so many different things like we talked about today. And then the telehealth world has opened up where you don't have to physically go to a location to talk with someone. And then, of course, podcasts are great. Right, Jalen?
That's right.
In order for us to get advice, hear things that we might already know, but really let it sink in and to talk it out.
100%.
Yep. So you all mentioned a few things that I'd like for you to send to me. Anything that you think would be a good resource that you've mentioned for our viewers. So I'll put those at the end on a slide. You mentioned some people I don't know, Betsy, but I loved their examples. And Jalen, we're going to put your podcast there. And then there could be where, some of the clinicians want information on maybe the Allender Center too, Betsy. So anything that we mentioned, I always like to put at the end.
Sure.
We talked a little bit about, so don't mention the things I already said, but the work-life balance thing is a huge thing. Taking care, self-care is a huge thing. We're not going to apologize for it. We're going to do it. Betsy said yes. So what are some other things that you all do for fun?
Let's see.
We want to get to know you.
I guess I'll go first. So I love to hike. That's one of my main things here. So I try to do one new hike a week. I'm a huge foodie. So I like to try a new restaurant. There's so many restaurants here in San Diego. I'm huge on traveling. Like I love to just go to new places I haven't been before, just have new experiences. Eventually I want to do overseas travel, but right now I'm just kind of focusing on trying to see as much of the US as I can.
Good.
Yeah, so that
Posting very funny memes, right?
Yeah. And laughing is a daily part of my routine. So, I have to post memes and I post content all the time. I love doing that. I feel like I'll just do that forever.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, and I'm a big gamer too. So that I like to play video games and just have fun. I like to just do fun things.
Betsy?
So I don't have as long a list as Jalen. And I'm over here like, oh no, but I'm going to be kind to myself. So I do the Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, and that's primarily for fun. This is something we prioritize for fun. I also discovered I kind of like being a plant lady. So it was one of the things I tried out and have really liked to tend to things and see them grow and propagate and then have plants to share, that type of thing. Other than that, I am pretty busy as a mom and yada yada.
No, that is fun. Great. We want to learn about you all too. I appreciate you all coming on and sharing. And I didn't ask you to, but you put your personal stories in there too, because when I was looking for people, guest panelists, I knew you all were coming from a personal experience too, but I wanted you to share, what you share with other people, but you did both. So thank you. And many, many years ago, I'll tell our viewers, we all three worked at the same place a long time ago, for not a long time, but a short time. But it's been amazing to see both of your careers blossom and your professional growth. And I'm so proud of both of you. And I know that the things that you shared today and your experience and expertise, it will go a long way with our viewers. And I know that there'll be a takeaway for everyone. So we appreciate your time, and we'll put your information on the end. Any last things to share before we close up?
Thank you so much for the invitation, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having us on. Everyone watching, just remember to have empathy for each other. That's one of the main things. If we, as caregivers and people that are having different conditions, if we can have empathy for each other and understand each other, kind of put each other in each other's shoes, then I think life will be a little bit easier, because you're able to really get on the level of others, and that's what it's really all about.
Perfect. Thank you. You all have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks, you too.
Bye, guys.
Bye.